We have misjudged this
Keep
machine
the rhythm
for millennia,
synchronized.
accepting the lie that this ancient wonder was built merely by muscle, sweat, and crude earthen ramps, that hundreds of thousands of slaves dragged 70-ton granite blocks across miles of shifting sand using only ropes and iron determination. But here is the paradox tearing that narrative apart. Basic physics dictates a ramp would require more material than the actual pyramid itself. Furthermore, the incline would render manual hauling biologically impossible. Mathematics does not lie, and the numbers state clearly that we are fundamentally wrong. Here is my promise. I will prove the builders of Giza were not stone-carrying laborers, but rather true masters of fluid physics. They did not fight against gravity. They neutralized it using a forgotten power known as hypre. Have you ever wondered if impossible is just a word for a technology that we have simply never been allowed to understand? When you look at the Great Pyramid, do not see a silent tomb. Adjust your focus and see a colossal geotechnical machine. It is a massive system of valves and pistons waiting to be awakened by the blue blood of the Nile River. Erase the image of stone-dragging crowds from your mind. That is a mirage. Replace it instead with a sophisticated industrial blueprint. If we apply fluid mechanics to the Giza Plateau, the dry desert vanishes, revealing instead a vast and complex energy grid. The Nile was not just water. It was kinetic energy. Our hypothesis suggests the ancients knew exactly how to isolate water pressure. They transformed the gentle flow into a hydrostatic lifting force capable of raising granite blocks as if they were mere styrofoam. They did not need wooden levers. They possessed water levers. The key lies not at the summit, but deep beneath your feet. It hides within subterranean piping systems that mainstream archaeology calls sewers, but which physics identifies as pressure compression circuits. So, before settling in, please like and subscribe. But only if you find this journey we are about to undertake truly valuable. Tell me in the comments, where on earth are you watching? Now, let us travel back in time and deconstruct a lost world. Look at the satellite map of Giza, but not as an archaeological site. View it instead as a gigantic printed circuit board. If a hydraulic engineer looks at the layout of pyramids and temples, they do not see tombs. They see a primordial hydroelectric plant. The Nile River was not merely a highway for ships. It was the primary feed source for a truly magnificent engine. The annual Nile flood, which the ancients called Akhet, was not a disaster to avoid. That was the moment the battery charged. The rising water levels provided the massive gravitational potential energy that the ancient engineers had been patiently waiting for. You see, the harbors that archaeologists describe were actually pressure reservoirs, designed to capture the immense power of the water. When the Nile rose, it was guided through a precise network of artificial canals designed to maintain the momentum of the flow. They did not let water flow freely. They forced it into narrower pipes, accelerating flow and turning potential energy into pure kinetic energy. Examine Kafur's Valley Temple closely. Massive granite blocks and incredibly thick walls are fitted together with absolute and undeniable precision. Why would a temple need the structure of a bunker? The answer lies in fluid physics. It was built to withstand high-pressure water. It was not a place of worship. It was a regulator valve station. Water was channeled from the river and forced into sealed causeways. We mistakenly identify these as ceremonial procession roads. But ask yourself, why must a procession road be watertight? Unless it is a giant aqueduct designed to transport massive water volumes from the riverbank all the way to the pyramid base. You are witnessing a planetary-scale energy harvesting system. They did not fight the river. They turned the river into part of the machine. Once water enters this closed system, physics changes. We are no longer discussing natural flow. We are talking about industrial hydraulics. Leave the scorching desert sun and descend deep underground into what archaeologists call the subterranean chamber. Textbooks have claimed this room was abandoned, an architectural mistake, a crude pit forgotten by the builders for centuries. But look closely at those rough walls with the eyes of a mechanical engineer. The chaos you see is actually function. This is not an abandoned tomb. This is a pressure relief valve chamber. In hydraulic systems, you need a place to release excess kinetic energy, a place for water to impact and create reaction force. If we pump Nile water into this closed system, pressure rises dangerously. This underground chamber acts as the machine's heart, creating the beat. Imagine water rushing down from great heights, compressing the air trapped inside this sealed chamber. As water floods in, air compresses until it reaches a breaking point and rebounds, pushing water upward with explosive force. This is the fundamental principle of the water hammer effect and the hydraulic ram pump. They created rough surfaces to break shock waves, preventing limestone from cracking under the constant pressure of thousands of tons of crashing water. You stand inside the ancient internal combustion engine, powered not by fossil fuels, but by the violent conflict of water and compressed air. From this dark, damp place, immense thrust is generated, transmitted upward through vertical limestone shafts, turning chaotic pressure into controlled lifting energy. We wonder how they ventilated workers at this depth. The answer is chilling. No workers were here when the machine operated. This is a dead zone, a high-pressure environment where the air is compressed tightly enough to tear apart human lungs. This chamber was not designed for life. It was designed for pure, unadulterated energy. Now we face the question haunting historians for 4,500 years. How did these stones defy gravity to climb 140 meters? Textbooks say they used human power. But imagine you are trying to lift a car to change a tire. Do you gather 20 neighbors to lift it by hand? No. You use a hydraulic jack. You use fluid physics to multiply your strength 1,000 times. Why assume history's greatest architects were less intelligent than modern mechanics? Here, Pascal's law enters the historical stage. It states that pressure applied to a confined fluid is transmitted undiminished in every direction. This is the secret of the invisible elevator. The Great Pyramid is hollower than you think, containing a network of vertical shafts. Mainstream Egyptologists call them air shafts or symbolic passageways for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars. But think with engineering logic. Souls do not need millimeter-precise geometry or polished load-bearing granite, but water certainly does. Visualize this process. Those so-called air shafts are actually nothing less than high-pressure hydraulic pipes. A stone block is brought to the base, attached to a float system or piston made of precisely crafted wood and leather. When valves from the compression chamber open, immense pressure from the Nile's water impulse is released into this vertical shaft.
Holding steady
the
on this
2.5-ton block needs
Easy now,
no
watch the
pulling.
edge.
It has no friction with the ground. It rides the water column. It floats up. This technology turns heavy labor into a dance of physics. At the desired height, another valve locks, keeping the water level stable. Workers simply rotate the block into place, as it is nearly weightless and fluid. Then water drains for the next stone. This was not hard labor. This was humanity's very first fully automated industrial assembly line. We have looked at hollow elevator shafts for thousands of years and wondered why the staircase was so steep. Come closer. Press your eyes right up against the joints between these massive stone blocks. Legend says you cannot insert a razor blade or even a hair between them. And that legend is true. But the real question is not how, but why. Why this obsession with mechanical perfection? Why waste millions of labor hours polishing stones that will be buried inside the structure or covered by the outer casing? If you are building a tomb to honor the dead, a gap of a few millimeters means absolutely nothing. But if you are building a high-pressure hydraulic system, a hairline gap is not a cosmetic flaw. It is a technical disaster. It represents the failure of the entire system. In the world of fluid physics, pressure is everything. If water leaks, pressure drops, and lift vanishes, 70-ton blocks will stop floating. They will fall and crush the machine. The microscopic precision seen at Giza is not art or religion. It is a mandatory requirement for watertight integrity. Look at the white Tura limestone that once covered the pyramid. We think it was for beauty. That is a mistake. That was the sealing layer. It transformed the pyramid from a pile of stones into a massive, closed container. And the mysterious mortar binding, the inner blocks which modern scientists still cannot replicate. Not just glue, it is a sealant, acting like a rubber gasket in your car engine, withstanding extreme pressure without being destroyed. We are looking at a quality control standard so strict that it puts modern construction projects to shame. They were assembling machine components. Each block was a prefab part, cut with aerospace engineering tolerances, not civil construction standards. When you understand the goal was holding water, not mummies, the madness of this perfection suddenly becomes incredibly logical. They calculated so water would not escape. Imagine standing on the Giza Plateau 4,500 years ago. But do not imagine a quiet, solemn space for burial rituals. Instead, imagine the sound. If this hydraulic theory is correct, then when this machine was turned on, it did not whisper, it roared. The mechanism we are discussing operates on the hydraulic ram pump principle. It is not a continuous, gentle flow. It operates in beats, thump, thump, thump. A continuous cycle of valve action, creating incredibly powerful water impulses. This entire massive limestone structure would vibrate with every beat, like standing next to a large ship's diesel engine. This is where the Grand Gallery, the most mysterious and majestic room inside the pyramid, reveals its true nature. Archaeologists call it a grand processional hall. But why does a hallway need soaring ceilings and slats along the walls? Why is it inclined exactly 26 degrees? Look, as an engineer, it is not a gallery. It is a counterweight chamber. A massive mass likely slid up and down in this space, acting as a pulse regulator. It balanced violent impacts from below, turning chaotic hydraulic shocks into a steady rhythm, save for the structure. And here is the fascinating part about materials. Red granite. Egyptians transported this from distant Aswan for its physical properties. Granite contains high quartz crystal content. When subjected to mechanical pressure and vibration, quartz creates a piezoelectric effect. As thousands of tons of water impacted the system, and stones resonated with low frequencies, the pyramid did not just pump. It might have sung. It emitted an electromagnetic field and low-frequency sound spreading across the valley. This vibration explains why the interior is strangely clean of soot, yet bears mechanical wear marks no copper tool could make. That is the wear of motion, of repetitive friction. We have called it the Tomb of Khufu. But perhaps that name is just how we personify something we do not understand. When operating, it was a mechanical heart, literally pumping life into the Nile civilization, beating rhythmically, shaking the very ground beneath your feet. A loud and powerful testament to how humanity tamed nature. So, what happened to this great machine? Why is it silent? The answer lies not in a dynasty's fall, but in planetary change. This system depended on one single element: water. Specifically, the precise water level and flow of the ancient Nile. But climate shifts. Over millennia, the Sahara expanded, rainfall dropped, and the Nile moved eastward, away from the Giza Plateau. When the power cord was unplugged, the machine stopped. We are like time travelers finding a dormant nuclear plant. We see cooling towers and concrete reactors, but we do not see uranium fuel rods, and we do not understand nuclear physics. So, looking at the hollow structure, we conclude this must be a temple. This is where they buried their kings. That is modern arrogance. We refuse to believe the past could hold technical keys that we have simply lost. What remains at Giza is a technological corpse. Wooden valves rotted, leather pistons turned to dust, and water receded long ago. Only the eternal limestone frame remains, the hardware of a software system that has been completely wiped out. We are looking at a fossilized power plant where ancestors tamed fluid physics at a level we are only just beginning to realize. This hydraulic theory explains more than just lifting stones. It explains the water erosion patterns on the Sphinx. It explains sea salt traces inside the Queen's chamber. It connects scattered clues into one unified design. It forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. We are not the first peak of human civilization. Others stood where we stand, gazing at stars and manipulating natural forces with a mastery that demands our respect. They needed no wheels or pulleys. They had the river, and they turned that river into an elevator to the stars. As desert winds blow through Giza's silent limestone canyons, they carry the echoing whispers of a lost era. We spent centuries searching for mummies and gold. But the real treasure is not material. The treasure is knowledge. The Great Pyramid stands not as a tomb of death, but as a monument to the wisdom of life. It reminds us that impossible is just a limit of imagination. If ancestors used water to reach the sky, what stops us? Perhaps we do not need to invent the future, we only need enough humility to decode the past. The machine sleeps, but its lesson remains. Energy is everywhere, waiting for minds daring enough to see the world differently.